Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. And AM 630. WMAL.
8:37. I've been talking a lot this morning here with Brian and Brian about Super Tuesday and the fallout and then trying to figure out, read the tea leaves, what's going on. We're going to turn now to Senator Rand Paul, a Republican senator from Tennessee.
Kentucky.
Excuse me. What did I just screw up?
Totally.
Sorry about that.
Assaulted the senator.
Senator, will you forgive me for that?
Absolutely not. That's unforgivable.
I agree.
You know what? Why I said that? I remember the story about what happened to you at the Nashville airport. That's why I got confused. So
who could forget that?
Pretty good excuse.
All right, so forgive me for that. I apologize. Kentucky, the great state of Kentucky, and so look. You look at all of that happened last night in Super Tuesday. What's your assessment of it?
Well, I guess that it's not over yet. I mean, we still have, 3 different winners last night, and then my father also had some strong seconds. The delegates are split up. Romney came out with the majority, and he's still obviously the front runner, and he's the one to beat. But at the same time, it's not over, and it's going to take a while. I don't see either Gingrich or Santorum dropping out since they had victories, and I don't see my father dropping out because he's got such a strong constituency that is different than the other constituencies.
All right, let me stop you right there, because with all due respect to you and your dad, who has made some very principled arguments and in many ways has changed the dialogue about what Republicans are talking about in this election, and give him credit for that. But the latest Gallup tracking poll has it Romney 34, this is nationwide, Santorum 24, Gingrich 15, and Ron Paul 12. They're really... Can you see a pathway to victory for your dad? And if you can't see a pathway to victory, why stay in the race?
I guess sort of it depends on which polls you look at. So, for example, Rasmussen did everybody against the president last week and showed that Romney and Ron Paul are the only 2 that beat the president. If you poll Gingrich against President Obama, he loses by 12 points. So really, it's unrealistic to think Gingrich could ever be president, whereas Ron Paul's difficulty is the Republican primary. Your numbers show that he has a difficult route in the Republican primary, but when you poll him against the president, Ron Paul beats the president with independents, and actually is the only one that does beat the president other than Romney.
But as he's not going to get the Republican nomination, I mean, can you see a pathway to the Republican nomination for your dad?
The difficulty is people would have to, wake up in a significant way to say, this is the guy who predicted the housing crisis when no one else did. This is the guy for several decades who has voted against all the big spending. Mm-hmm. Many of the others are pretenders. Many of the others say they are the Reagan conservative, but in reality, when you look at their voting record, I mean, for example, people see Santorum as a conservative alternative, but he supported Arlen Specter, who became the 60th vote for Obamacare. I mean, we really can rest some of the blame for Obamacare on Santorum, but it hasn't been discussed enough, and I think he gets sort of a free ride on that.
And one more question. Let's say that somewhere down the path your dad does decide, okay, look, I fought the good fight. Where do you think he would throw his to support? Because a lot of people seem to think that your dad and Mitt Romney have something going on.
Yeah, I tell people if there's a secret deal, it must be secret from me. Nobody's letting me in on it. But no, I thought Tim Pawlenty had the best statement on it when he said, if there's anybody less likely to make a deal in Washington, there probably isn't anybody less likely in Washington to make a deal than Ron Paul. And it really goes against his very nature to make some kind of deal. And so, no, I don't. I think the only thing you see going on is that from my dad's campaign's point of view is they're trying to get the non-Romney vote. Romney has locked up the establishment vote, and then that's about 35 to 40% of the Republican Party, but there's 60% up for grabs. So our job has always been to point out the inconsistencies of Gingrich and of Santorum, and that their conservative credentials really aren't all they're cracked up to be.
All right, let's talk about the fiscal issues for a second. I know that some members of the House and GOP, they want to tear up the budget deal that was made with the president last year. The $1 trillion deficits can't continue. And there are some resistance to that, even from Republicans saying a deal is a deal. Do you see that as a possibility that we could actually get something done to actually attack the deficit this year?
We ought to. I mean, my office is tomorrow releasing our own budget, which will balance the budget in 5 years. And because we cut so much spending, we actually allow military spending to rise above the sequester level, which would go against last year's agreement, but against it in a good way because we cut such significant spending. What I fear, though, is that someone in the House will say, oh, we're going to go against the sequester on military spending, but we're going to keep all the other spending in there, and so basically spending still rises, the debt rises, and we do nothing. That's the more likely scenario. But we're trying to let people know, and we've met with members of the House, and to tell them we have to have the end result be a balanced budget. If we're just Democrat light, and if the Republicans introduce a budget that doesn't balance for 28 years or doesn't balance for 38 years, that to me is insufficient and I think not even worth working on.
So then the Ryan budget from last year is no good for you.
Yeah, I voted against it basically, and I like Paul Ryan. I think he has some good ideas on Medicare reform, but unfortunately if the budget doesn't balance in a finite time, if it takes 28 years, nobody in the American public can see that as some great advantage over the Democrats. And I don't think we have 28 years to fiddle around with the problem. I think we need to do what we believe in. You know, when Reagan ran, our platform said that we believe that the Department of Education shouldn't occur in Washington, shouldn't even be here, should be abolished. That was part of our platform for 20 years until we got big government conservatives in the early part of this century, and they doubled the size of the Department of Education. Interestingly, Santorum was one of those who voted to double the size of the Department of Education. Our problem is Republicans as much as it is Democrats.
All right, before we let you go, I Republicans often get criticized for wanting to repeal Obamacare and that they don't really care for the poor, or don't care about people who are uninsured in this country. I hear that you went back home and did some free surgeries yesterday.
Yeah, I try to do eye surgery as often as I can, and I've been doing it for free around the state of Kentucky. And I think physicians don't get enough credit. I'm one of thousands in Kentucky who are doing free surgery every week. We would see patients walk in with no insurance. There's always been good access to care in this country through charity, but we've gotten this idea that charity is a bad thing, that only the government should do this. But in the beginning, and really since the beginning of modern medicine, charity's always had a big role in providing care for the poor.
All right, and you'll let us know if there is some kind of deal between your dad and the Romney camp, right?
Somebody would have to tell me if there is, but I kind of doubt it. Thanks.
Senator Rand Paul from the marvelous, fantastic state of Kentucky.